Welcome to this explainer. We're going to dive right into a massive blind spot in our standard history. We're looking closely at a profoundly important era stretching from roughly 750 to 1258 CE, the Islamic Golden Age. The real blind spot here is how half millennium of serious scientific advancement just kind of vanished from the story we usually tell about human progress.
Let me ask you a question that seems pretty straightforward on the surface. Where did the Renaissance actually come from? If you think back to the standard narrative taught in most Western schools, you'd likely say it was a revival of classical learning. Europe rediscovered ancient Greece and Rome, scientists went back to Plato, Aristotle, and Euclid, and boom, from that rediscovery came Galileo, Leonardo, and the foundations of the modern world. But there's a glaring 500-year gap in that textbook story.
The standard narrative draws a straight line from Greece and Rome directly to the Renaissance, completely erasing half a millennium of vital scientific advancement. But historical reality reveals that between antiquity and the Renaissance, the intellectual capital of the world was absolutely not in Europe. The truth is, the Renaissance as we know it simply couldn't have happened without the massive contributions of Islamic scholarship sitting right smack in the middle of that timeline.
Section 1. Baghdad and the House of Wisdom.
To really grasp how this builds, transport yourself to 9th century Baghdad under the Abbasid caliphs. To understand the sheer scale of this intellectual capital, just look at the numbers. During the 9th, 10th, and 11th centuries, Baghdad had a population estimated between 500,000 and 1 million citizens. At this exact same time, London had roughly 20,000 residents. Baghdad was literally the largest, most sophisticated city on Earth, making it the perfect home for a massive, state-sponsored research engine.
Now, the House of Wisdom, or Beit al-Hikmah, was not just some passive library where old books gathered dust. No way. It was a cosmopolitan research institution. It was fully funded by the state, and translators were reportedly paid the weight of their translated books in solid gold. It was a place where Muslim, Christian, Jewish, and Zoroastrian scholars all worked side by side, translating works from Greek, Syriac, Persian, and Sanskrit into Arabic. And they didn't just archive this global knowledge, they actively criticized it, corrected it, and fundamentally extended it.
Section 2. 5 Pioneers of Modern Science.
Let's dive right into the specific breakthroughs of 5 foundational scientists, starting with Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. Working at the House of Wisdom around 820 CE, he wrote a truly revolutionary mathematics textbook. He treated mathematical problems entirely abstractly, demonstrating that a universal procedure could solve entire classes of problems. So the crucial takeaway here is that al-Khwarizmi's operation of completion, which is written as algebra in Arabic, is the literal origin of the word algebra. And it goes even further. When his works were later translated into Latin, his name was Latinized to algorithmi, giving us the exact etymological root of the word algorithm.
Now, while al-Khwarizmi was establishing algebra in Baghdad, another pioneer, Ibn al-Haytham, was hard at work in Cairo. Before Ibn al-Haytham came along, the ancient Greek theory of vision claimed that the eye actually emitted outward rays to touch objects, while by 1015 CE, Ibn al-Haytham entirely demolished that theory. He built the first documented camera obscura to prove that light travels in straight lines from objects directly into the eye. By doing this, he established the rigorous process of hypothesizing, testing, observing, and revising. He effectively invented the scientific method 6 full centuries before Francis Bacon got the credit for it in Europe.
Next up is al-Biruni. In the 11th century, this polymath calculated the exact radius of the Earth. He devised his own unique method, measuring the angle of dip of the horizon from a mountain peak and applying trigonometry. His final calculation? 6,339 kilometers. The actual modern value we use today is 6,371 kilometers. That is an error margin of less than 0.5%. A level of precision like that was completely unmatched in the European tradition until the 1600s.
Then we have the absolute medical giants. Take Ibn Sina. He synthesized Greek medical knowledge with his own rigorous clinical observations. His resulting textbook, The Canon of Medicine, systematically documented 760 drugs, proposed a theory of contagion that anticipated germ theory by 800 years, and laid out strict methods for clinical trials. This work was so effective and comprehensive that it became the standard medical textbook in European universities, including places like Oxford and Paris, for over 6 centuries.
And finally, over in Islamic Spain, we have al-Zahrawi. He wrote the very first systematic illustrated surgical manual in history, known as al-Tashrif. He meticulously documented and drew over 200 surgical instruments, many of which he designed all by himself. We're talking about forceps, retractors, the speculum. These foundational tools were designed in Cordoba, and honestly, they'd be completely recognizable to any surgeon walking into a modern operating room today.
Section 3. The erasure of attribution.
This brings us to a really central tension in this explainer. If Europe was substantially relying on Islamic science for hundreds of years, how did they use it while completely erasing the scholars who actually created it? It's what historians call the translation paradox. In places like Toledo and Sicily during the 12th century, there was a massive movement to translate these texts from Arabic into Latin. Europeans desperately needed this knowledge. But during this process, the Arabic names were Latinized. Ibn Sina became Avicenna. Al-Khwarizmi became Algorithmi. Ibn al-Haytham became Alhazan. These absolutely were not neutral transliterations. They systematically severed the discoveries from their origins. A student sitting in Paris studying Avicenna was learning from an isolated medical authority, entirely disconnected from the broader, continuous body of Islamic science.
Following this massive transfer of knowledge, the texts moved westward, got translated into Latin, and were fully absorbed into the Western tradition. Once absorbed, the Renaissance narrative took hold, a specific narrative that required a direct, unbroken line from Greece to Europe. So where Islamic scholars had actually extended and corrected ancient knowledge, those achievements were quietly attributed back to Greek originals, or just absorbed as anonymous Moorish math. The work survived, but the attribution certainly did not.
Section 4. The 1258 Fall of Baghdad.
To understand the full historical weight of this era, we really have to address how the Golden Age abruptly ended in its intellectual heartland. In February 1258, the Mongol forces of Hulagu Khan sacked Baghdad. The destruction was totally systematic and devastating. The House of Wisdom, the greatest library and research center in the medieval world, was destroyed in a matter of weeks. As this contemporary quote vividly describes, so many books were thrown into the Tigris River that the water literally ran black with ink. It was an unquantifiable loss of human knowledge. Every clinical observation, every complex calculation that existed only in Baghdad was just gone forever.
Section 5. The urgency of now.
But the story of the Islamic Golden Age is far from finished. Because copies of texts moved westward before the Mongols even arrived, a lot of it survived. While initiatives like the Endangered Archives program have recently digitized over 740,000 pages of at-risk Islamic manuscripts, scholars estimate there are still between 3 and 5 million Arabic manuscripts sitting completely uncatalogued in libraries, mosques, and private collections worldwide. The vast majority of these have never been translated into any European language. The recovery of the Golden Age is an ongoing, highly active project right now.
We just explored how 5 specific scientists fundamentally shaped our modern world, giving us algebra, the camera obscura, global medical standards, and vital surgical tools. So I'll leave you with this. If that is what we know about, what else is hiding in the 3 to 5 million pages we haven't even looked at yet?